Hey y'all, Johnny B here, and in this quick lesson, I just wanted to show how to work with a vertical scroll view. All right, so lots of times we'll be designing our app and we'll be adding all sorts of elements, and you might be working in your storyboard with like an iPhone 10 or 10s Max, and then you're like, oh no, I have to support that iPhone SE still. And so you'll switch down here to the iPhone SE, and man, none of your stuff fits. And so one of the ways that you can get around this is, trying to mess with all sorts of auto layout constraints and size classes. But the easier way, well, kind of easier way, is to just embed all of that in a scroll view, okay? Now I say kind of easier way because the constraints for scroll views can be kind of super finicky, very difficult to get right. If you do a Google search for scroll view iOS, you will find a whole bunch of posts and from people that are just really struggling to get their constraints right, okay? So what we're gonna do real quick is kind of just run through the way that I have found works reliably to add a scroll view to your content, okay? So let's go ahead and add some elements here. I'm gonna just go ahead and search for UI view and change the background color on this. I'll make a few of these. And one thing that I want to show you is here, if you select your view controller, if you come up here to the attributes inspector, you'll see size here and it says inferred. You can actually change that to freeform, and then we can come over here to the simulated size and you can say freeform, and then you can change this height to whatever you want. So let's say like 1200, and now you'll see you have a lot more room to work with. So if you're working with something like form fields where you're having a whole bunch of information that they need to input and they're going to need to be scrolling, this is great for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some constraints to our views here. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know is that when you're working with a scroll view, you need to have a chain of constraints from the top all the way down to the bottom, okay? So let's go ahead and add these constraints. So I'm working in the case where you've already been working with your UI for a while, and then you realize you might need a scroll view, because that's kind of a common case. You don't start out thinking, I'm going to definitely need a scroll view for this. You realize it halfway through, and then that is where your troubles begin. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to constrain this to the top 20, and we'll do 20 and 20 for the next one, and then we'll add a height for this as well. And then we're going to do that for each of these next ones. Okay, 20, 20, 20, and set the height. And then here we have 20, 20, 20, set the height. And for this one also, 20, 20, 20, and I forgot to set the height. And then finally, 20, 20, 20, and set the height, okay? So now if we look at this, let's change the colors on some of these just to differentiate. I'll go with red, make this one gray, and make this one that color. Okay, so we have these colors, looks fine here, but if we switch to our, say our SE, we will quickly see that once this finishes loading, oh, I forgot I have it on freeform. Let's change this back to inferred and simulated size fixed. You'll see that we are losing a couple down here, all right? So let's go ahead and switch that back, and we'll bump this back up to 1,000. All right, so what do we do? How do we get this all in a scroll view, all right? So we're gonna select our views that we want inside of our scroll view. I'm gonna come down here to our embed button. I'm gonna click and say embed in scroll view, okay? All right, so now we're in a scroll view, and we're going to have some some red constraints issues, okay? So we need constraints for X position for all of these. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is with our scroll view, we are going to set these constraints. We're gonna go 0 from the top, left, right, and bottom, okay? So add those 4 constraints. Then we are going to center it horizontally in the container. Add that constraint. All right, so far we have constrained the scroll view, 0 from all 4 sides, and centered it. All right, so now what we need to do is what I have found works the best is when you add these constraints for these views inside of the scroll view, you don't constrain it to the super view, to the scroll view. Instead, we are going to constrain it to the view. Okay, so to the main root view. So control and drag, and I'm gonna say leading space to safe area, okay? You want it to be to the safe area, not to the scroll view. So leading space, and then trailing space, then leading space, and trailing space, leading space, trailing space, leading space, trailing space, leading space, and trailing space. All right, so when we embedded it, we lost our top constraint here. So I'm going to re-add that. So I'm going to say 20 from the top, add that constraint, and then here 20 from the bottom. All right, so now we still are in the red. Okay, so then we have a couple more things to do. I'm going to choose this top one. I'm going to go horizontally in container. So we're going to line it horizontally. And then we are going to add a leading constraint and a trailing constraint. And now we should be good to go. All right, perfect. So now let's go ahead and run this on an iPhone 8, let's say. And here we go. Now we can scroll. Very good. All right, let's try it out on a smaller one, on an iPhone SE, and run that. And sure enough, we can scroll here as well. All right, perfect. All right, so to recap, the constraints that you need for the scroll view, you need to constrain it from all the sides that you want it to go to. And I added an align to center. I don't think you actually need that. It doesn't look like you do. And then with your inner views, you need to make sure that you have a constant line from the top all the way down to the bottom for all of your constraints. Then for each of them, add leading and trailing constraints to the main root view, not the scroll view, but to the main view. And then finally, for one of them, you can pick, I usually do the top one, align it to the center, and then add leading and trailing edges to the scroll view, and then the rest should follow suit. All right, so I hope that helps you out next time you run into this issue when you need to have a little bit more room and you don't want to mess with layout constraints and all that kind of stuff. You can just put it in a scroll view and make it look great. All right, so hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.